Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India News Hour, India's voice to the world. I'm Prasar Bharati. Coming up in the next hour. 11 people injured after Lebanon rocket strikes central town of Tira in Israel. In US election, Trump and Harris continue to press home their closing messages in the key swing states of Michigan and Wisconsin. Death toll reaches to 205 after devastating flash floods wreak havoc in eastern and southern parts of Spain. In sports, India holds control on New Zealand in Mumbai Test after Shubman Gill and Pant fueled hosts come back. At least 11 people were injured as rocket launched from Lebanon hit a house in central Israel. Israel's ambulance service said that the 11 people were hurt by shrapnel. Air raid sirens continued to sound in northern Israel as rocket fire from Lebanon continued. Some of the projectiles were intercepted by the Israeli military. The rocket attack has dimmed prospects of a ceasefire between Israel and Hezbollah. American envoys have been working to secure ceasefires between Israel and Hezbollah and Hamas ahead of the US presidential election next Tuesday. However, Hamas has rejected the proposal, saying that it fails to meet its condition of complete Israeli withdrawal. The United States on Friday announced the deployment of additional military assets to West Asia. The Pentagon said that US will deploy B-52 bombers, fighter jets, refueling aircrafts and Navy destroyers. The latest deployments would take place in the coming months. The decision comes as the USS Abraham Lincoln aircraft carrier and its accompanying warships are set to depart the region soon. The move aims to maintain a robust US presence amid ongoing conflicts involving Israel, Hamas and Hezbollah. The Israeli army on Friday claimed that it had eliminated one of Hamas's last high-ranking members. The IDF said in a statement that Is al-Din Qassab, a member of Hamas's political bureau, had been eliminated during an airstrike in southern Gaza town of Khan Yunis. Israel described Qassab as one of the last surviving high-ranking members of Hamas, responsible for coordinating with other groups in Gaza. The IDF said Qassab held the authority to direct the execution of terrorist attacks against the state of Israel. The third phase of the polio vaccination campaign in Gaza for children under the age of 10 began on Saturday. The campaign follows the successful implementation of the first two phases of the second round in central and southern Gaza, which reached over 95% of the target in these areas. The polio campaign began on September 1st after World Health Organization confirmed the first polio case in territory in 25 years. A school in Gaza was reopened for the first time in southwest region since last year's October 7 attack. The school in Mawasi Khan Yunis will contain all the necessary logistics for the educational process, with an estimated capacity of 1,500 male and female students for the elementary and preparatory stages. It is the first regular school to be opened since the outbreak of the aggression in Gaza on October 7th last year. The new school year in the Palestinian territories officially began in September, with all classes shut due to ongoing conflict. The U.S. Defense Department has unveiled a new $425 million security assistance package for Ukraine aimed at addressing Kyiv's critical security and defense needs. In a statement, the Pentagon highlighted that the aid includes air defense interceptors, munitions for rocket systems and artillery, armored vehicles and anti-tank weapons. It is the 69th aid installment under the Presidential Drawdown Authority, a program that enables the transfer of US military stockpiles to Ukraine since August 2021. Ukraine is pushing its allies for long-range weapons, saying that thousands of North Korea troops are all set to enter the conflict on Russia's side. More details in our next report.
The prospects of the involvement of North Korean troops has become the latest flashpoint in the Russia-Ukraine conflict. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has said that first thousands of soldiers from North Korea are near the Ukrainian border. Zelensky also slammed US, UK and Germany for not sending long-range ballistic missiles to Ukraine.
Putin перевіряє реакцію Заходу.
Putin is checking the reaction of the West. Putin is checking the reaction of NATO countries. Putin is also checking the reaction of South Korea. And I believe that after all these reactions, Putin will decide and increase the contingent. I believe that the reaction that is there today is nothing. It is zero. Then the number of Korean soldiers will be increased on our soil.
Я про це відповідав нещодавно.
Accusing the US and South Korea of pushing the Korean peninsula into war scenarios, North Korea has vowed to continue self-defense efforts.
North Korea will further intensify its practical efforts to ensure the permanent stability of the Korean peninsula and the region in a responsible manner and resolutely counter any threat and challenge in the present and future.
Earlier, during North Korean foreign minister's visit to Moscow, the country vowed to stand by Russia until its victory in Ukraine. Raising alarm over North Korean troops' alleged involvement in the conflict, South Korea has said that it is considering all possible scenarios to send aid to Ukraine. Meanwhile, US has unveiled a new $425 million military assistance package for Ukraine. The aid includes air defense interceptors and anti-tank weapons. Bureau Report, DD India.
On to the United States. With 3 days to go until the presidential election, Republican Donald Trump and Democrat Kamala Harris are campaigning hard in a last-minute bid to woo voters. The focus is shifting to voter turnout and key battleground states with renewed vigor in projecting the key issues.
Kamala Harris and Donald Trump are traveling from one state to another to impart last-hour impression on voters, as Wisconsin is one of the key swing states. Both parties on Friday reiterated their issues to address the concerns of the voters. As Republican candidate Trump focused on migrants, jobs and border security, Democratic Kamala Harris assured tax cut and elderly health care.
Of all new jobs, net job gains in the past year have gone to illegal migrants. And the jobs were taken from African Americans, Hispanic Americans, and union workers. I don't think the unions are too happy about this. But I told you this was going to happen. It was inevitable.
At the top of my list is bringing down the cost of living for you. That will be my focus every single day as president, including I will give a middle-class tax cut to over 100 million Americans. If you are caring then for an elderly parent or relative, my plan is to cover the cost of home care under Medicare.
Harris, who only entered the race in July after President Joe Biden dropped out amid fears over his declining mental acuity, was joined on stage by star rapper Cardi B in the latest of the series of high-energy events. Earlier, Harris reprimanded Trump for using violent rhetoric when discussing one of his chief Republican critics.
He has increased his violent rhetoric, Donald Trump has, about political opponents, and in great detail suggested rifles should be trained on former Representative Liz Cheney. This must be disqualifying. Anyone who wants to be president of the United States who uses that kind of violent rhetoric is clearly disqualified and unqualified to be president.
More than 70 million Americans have already cast their ballots ahead of Election Day on Tuesday. Opinion polls show Trump and Harris running neck to neck, with victory depending on who prevails across the 7 swing states. Bureau Report, DD India.
US President Joe Biden addressed a gathering in Philadelphia on Friday. Biden hailed his record of creating jobs, saying he has had the best record of any president, adding that he's the only president to have walked a picket line.
I'm honored to be considered the most pro-union president in American history, and I'm proud to be the first president to walk a picket line. And Kamala is proud to have walked a picket line as well. The other guys look for picket lines to cross, but we've always had their back.
Georgia is one of the key swing states of US presidential elections. DD India correspondent Shubhendu Ghosh talked to Bob, a council member of city of Johns Creek. Being one of the first elected members of the city council from the Indian American community in Georgia, Bob talks about his experience in public service, issues and political significance of Indian community in Trump-Harris close contest.
We are in Atlanta. I have with me one of the first Indian American person elected to public office here in Georgia, Mr. Bob Eramali, member of the John Creek City Council. Mr. Eramali, welcome to DD India. Now, first, I want to learn from you your experience as an Indian American holding a public office here in Georgia.
Wonderful. I was serving in the Indian Air Force as a combat pilot. There I learned that if not you, who else? If you don't defend, who else will defend? The same ethos, I got it to my adopted country and my city, Johns Creek City. So therefore, when I ran for election, amazingly, this city is so agnostic to race, color, and country of origin. To just give you an idea, I got voted by about close to 60% of Caucasian people and about 10-12% of Indian people. So that shows that this city is kind of merit-oriented rather than, where you come from, what you represent, what nationality you belong or country of origin or something like that.
Right. And here we are looking at the presidential elections. And I also want to broaden the question about Indian Americans. What is the political significance of Indian Americans in America in general and Georgia as a swing state in particular?
Typically, Indians vote around 20 to 25% for Republicans. President Trump managed to increase it to around 30-35% last time around. And then it so happened that this time they're almost close to 30-35% are expected to vote for President Trump. So I think we play a significant pivotal role, very much like the Jewish population, which is about double the size of ours.
And finally, coming to the big contest, Donald Trump versus Kamala Harris. What kind of contest are we looking at, according to you?
I think if the issues in the center stage are illegal immigration, for which we had fair amount of, since I'm also in the city council, I know firsthand the city chief of police comes and gives us a brief on what kind of law and order situation prevails. And we do get an idea that we should be controlling this illegal immigration. If that is an issue, and the inflation. See, that's how at one point in time, last 4 years, we had an inflation of 8%. That is unheard of. And especially when somebody left it at 1.75%. President Trump left it at 1.75.
Right. On that note, Mr. Bob Eramali, thank you very much for speaking with DD India.
Thank you, Mr. Ghosh. Very nice.
That was one of the first Indian American person elected to public office here in Georgia, with camera person Jayashankar, Shubhendu Ghosh for DD India in Atlanta.
And still to come on DD India News Hour. Just few days left for the US presidential election. We give you all the details from Ground Zero. With AQI above 1,000, Pakistan's Lahore tops lists of the most polluted cities in the world. UN Nature Summit agrees to create permanent body for indigenous representation.
Complex issues, hidden agendas, twists and turns, strategic games. We think all dots are linked. We just need to connect them. Join me every week as I connect the dots to unravel hidden designs in statecraft, mysteries, and decode issues that matter to you. Watch Connecting the Dots with me at these times on DD India.
You're watching DD India News Hour. I am Siddharth Bharadwaj. As the dust settles on a pivotal week in US election campaign, candidates are making their final pushes ahead of the election day, November 5th. Both candidates are accusing each other of negative campaigning while launching no-holds-barred attacks on the other. How does American voters see this? Amritpal Singh travels to upstate Pennsylvania to take stock. Watch this.
The race so tight, the stakes so high, that vilifying the opponent has become the norm this election season. Violent threats of revenge, racism, misogyny, negative campaigning, it's all there by the bucket load. The dance of democracy is as alluring as it is disturbing. So what impact do these negative campaigns have on US elections? How are the Americans responding to it?
Both sides are kind of like either scared or they hate each other.
The individuals that's running right now should bring more of unity instead of division. With the false narratives that's being pursued on both parties, Republican and Democratic, they're not bringing the unity that we probably need to even to begin the conversation of change. Who are we as the people to have that same unity or to show that unity?
Political watchers say it's so because the stakes this time are very high for both sides, especially in the swing states.
Both campaigns themselves are, making a very strong presence here in Pennsylvania because Pennsylvania is absolutely required for either that wants to win this. Democrats are very concerned that their base might not come out. Republicans are also making their campaigns, and hardcore Republicans are charged up.
It's very interesting. I was very surprised when I saw it. It says Republicans for Harris Walz, clearly pointing out that they are trying to win over voters from the other side to win this election. It's that close, it's that tight, and swing states like Pennsylvania could indeed decide who sits in the Oval Office for the next 4 years. With cameraman Sanjay Jena, this is Amritpal Singh for DD India in Collegeville, Pennsylvania.
DD India is on an election trail to the United States. My colleague Shubhendu Ghosh is in Atlanta in the swing state of Georgia. In fact, in Georgia, and he scans through some of the prominent newspapers and takes us through the latest developments in the political contest for the White House.
We are at the beautiful Emory University campus here in Atlanta. Behind me, you can see the sports arena. A football match is underway. The other sports also being practiced there. Let's turn to the newspapers of the day and the big stories related to the election. I'm looking at the USA Today first. And the article on the front page tries to capture the palpable tension in the air as we approach November 5th. It says the United States of anxiety and lists all the reasons why it is so. 2 assassination attempts, a last-minute candidate switch, war in the Middle East, border issues, dire prediction of dictatorship, death threats against election workers. Those are some of the reasons why the tensions and concerns have been on the rise as far as this election is concerned. What this article does is that it surveys views of ordinary voters about how they're feeling about the election day. The next article from the same newspaper, we turn to the opinion page. It's interesting because there are 2 articles here, one supporting why Kamala Harris deserves to be the next president, and the second one about why Donald Trump might get all the support. The first one, it's written by Sarah Pequeno. She's a columnist with the newspaper. The headline reads, "With abortion rights on the line, we can't afford a Trump win." So the heart of this election, the issue of women's rights, especially vis-a-vis abortion, makes it very, very crucial, according to the writer, that the women voters and others who support women's rights must stand up with Kamala Harris. We turn to the next opinion article. It is by Nicole Russell, and she says, it's interesting, she says, "I dislike Trump, but I'm still voting for him." and she lists the reason why it's so. And she says that it would have been better if Republican Party had come up with another presidential candidate. But when she compares Donald Trump with Kamala Harris for various range of issues, she thinks Donald Trump may be the right choice to become the next president. And she talks about the various key themes, why it is so. She talks about the foreign policy is one issue in which she thinks that Donald Trump coming into the office could change the manner in which the conflicts are headed ahead. The economy, which is a common concern for all sections of society. And finally, the border security. And she says that Donald Trump has shown and spoken that he can handle all of these issues better than Kamala Harris. So the next paper I'm looking at is the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. On the front page, an issue that is making news, especially in the run-up to the main election day, the controversy around voting fraud. It says the 2020 election fraud claims persist, but most are debunked. Instead of confirming a conspiracy, investigators have just shown that there have been some isolated cases of errors in the vote counting and other processes, not a fraud, election fraud that Donald Trump had spoken about in 2020. Those were some of the big stories in the newspapers today. With camera person Jaishankar, Shubhendu Ghosh for DT India in Atlanta.
The US Supreme Court rejected on Friday a Republican bid to block the counting of provisional ballots cast by voters in the election battleground state of Pennsylvania who make mistakes on their mail-in ballots, and a decision that could affect thousands of votes in Tuesday's presidential election. The justice denied an emergency request by Republican National Committee and Republican Party of Pennsylvania to put on hold the October 23rd Pennsylvania Supreme Court ruling in favor of two Butler County voters who sought to have their provisional ballots counted after their mail-in ballots were rejected during that state's primary election for lacking secrecy envelopes. Pennsylvania is one of a handful of closely contested states expected to decide the outcome of the presidential race between Republican former President Donald Trump and Democratic Vice President Kamala Harris. A judge in the U.S. state of Georgia issued an order on Friday extending the deadline for the return and counting of absentee ballots after a county failed to promptly send out some 3,000 mail-in ballots for Tuesday's election that were requested by a deadline. Under Georgia state law, eligible voters may request an absentee ballot up to 11 days before any election. Civil rights groups said Cobb County had violated the law and asked the judge to extend the return deadline on the ballots by 3 days to November 8. India's Minister of State for Environment, Forest and Climate Change, Kirti Vardhan Singh, met Armenian Deputy Minister for Environment in Cali, Colombia, on the sidelines of the 16th meeting of the Conference of Parties to the Convention on Biological Diversity. The leaders exchanged views on issues of mutual interest, including biodiversity, culture, and a shared history. The world's biggest nature protection conference has agreed in Cali, Colombia on Friday to create a permanent body to represent the interests of indigenous people under the UN's Biodiversity Convention. Representatives of indigenous peoples, many in traditional dress and headgear, broke out in cheers and chants as 196 countries agreed on a subsidiary body dedicated to matters of relevance to indigenous peoples and local communities. It was the first major breakthrough for the 16th Conference of Parties, the COP16 to the UN's Convention on Biodiversity, which opened in Cali near 2 weeks ago and went deep into extra time Friday as delegates clashed on ways to raise funding for plans to preserve nature. The death toll in Spain's worst floods reached 205 on Friday as fears grew for dozens missing as hopes of finding survivors fade. The floods have tossed vehicles, collapsed bridges and covered towns with mud since Tuesday. Are the European country's deadliest such disaster in decades. Rescuers equipped with helicopters, drones and sniffer dogs waded through water and rummaged through debris in search of dozens of people and the authorities believe are still missing. The government has deployed more than 500 troops to the stricken areas in Valencia to bolster the 1,200 already on the site for search, rescue and logistics tasks. Another 500 will be dispatched on Saturday. Thousands of volunteers of all ages, walks of life and different nationalities, including doctors, are in Spain to help with cleanup efforts, provide food, water and pharmaceuticals.
People are staying at home without medication. They need medical assistance and cannot access health centers. Everything is closed, including pharmacies. So if we don't deliver this, people would be left without medication and they haven't been taking it for days.
Search for possible victims in all places on public roads, shops, houses, where we are required, and we have to inform the judicial authority so that they can take charge of the recovery. Our job is to be where we need to be, but the truth is that the magnitude of this event is devastating.
With the dynamics of climate changing world over, a report has found that climate change played a role in the catastrophic floods in Spain. An analyst from Climameter, the organization behind the report, said that climate change contributed to the intensity of the precipitation that triggered the floods. Officials said the death toll is likely to keep rising. It is already Spain's worst flood-related disaster in modern history and the deadliest to hit Europe since the 1970s.
Climate change played a role in the intensity of the precipitation that led to the floods. So that's the main result, up to 7 millimeters per day, more precipitation than in the past. So we basically compared similar storms in the present and in the past. So in the present meaning from 2002 until today, and the past is from 1979 to 2002. So basically, we've already seen that climate change already played a role in increasing the intensity of the precipitation only in the last 50 years of data that we have.
Meanwhile, a water spout was seen swirling over a river in Australia's Brisbane on Friday as a severe storm passed through. Eyewitness footage captured the water spout rising and gaining strength at Kangaroo Point. Toppled furniture and broken tree branches were also seen lying in the area. According to Australian Broadcasting Corporation, the Meteorology Bureau's senior forecaster Shane Kennedy described it as an extremely rare weather phenomenon. Queensland Ambulance Service said a 22-year-old man had suffered ankle and head injuries after being hit by a falling tree branch at the bottom of Kangaroo Point cliffs. It comes after reports the water spout had uprooted a tree at the top of Kangaroo Point cliffs, causing it to fall. Lahore in Pakistan tops the list of world's most polluted city, recording an air quality index of above 1,000 as of Saturday morning. According to Swiss air quality rating agency IQ Air, the AQI in Lahore surged to 1,067 on Saturday morning. For years, the city of Lahore has regularly featured on the list of the world's most polluted cities. The Punjab government in Pakistan imposed a green lockdown in designated smog hotspots across Lahore last week, including restrictions on barbecue joints, marriage halls, use of commercial generators and motorcycle rickshaws. This comes just days after India's national capital Delhi was declared to be the world's most polluted city in the aftermath of Diwali. Let's take a look at other stories making news around the world. Serbia wound up a rescue operation and opened an investigation on Saturday into a roof collapse that killed 14 and injured 3 at a railway station in the northern city of Novi Sad. A rescue operation is underway to clear the fallen concrete and search for bodies and survivors at the train station in the Serbian city. As tension looms between police and protesters in Bolivia, former President Evo Morales called for a dialogue with the government to address the social and political divisions that have emerged since his departure from office. Ex-Bolivian President Evo Morales has asked his supporters to remove roadblocks but declared a hunger strike until the government agrees to negotiate. In Venezuela, relatives of protesters held a vigil outside Tocuito prison, calling for release of post-election protesters. Relatives of protesters marched with candles and placards demanding release of their loved ones. Earlier, the police arrested the people in a protest that arose out of discontent with the results in presidential elections. Relatives said that they were innocently imprisoned because none of them are guilty of anything. They are political prisoners. And still to come on DD India News Hour. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Greek PM Kyriakos Mitsotakis reaffirms their commitment to strengthen strategic partnership between two countries. India's Minister of External Affairs Dr. S. Jaishankar met his counterpart from Thailand. What happened? We'll tell you. Stay tuned.
Who will be the next president of United States of America?
Will Donald Trump make a dramatic comeback, or will Kamala Harris become America's first woman president?
It's a tight race to the White House.
The knives are out and the battle lines sharply drawn.
He's becoming increasingly unstable and unhinged.
She's a threat to democracy because she shouldn't even be the candidate.
I'm Amritpal Singh.
I'm Shubhendu Ghosh.
We travel across the United States
to decode the issues at the heart of this polarized election.
Watch this space only on DD India.
You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Siddharth Bharadwaj, and a quick recap of the headlines. 11 people injured after Lebanon rockets strike central towns of Tira in Israel. In US election, Trump and Harris continue to press home their closing messages in the key swing states of Michigan and Wisconsin. Death toll reaches to 205 after devastating flash floods wreak havoc in eastern and southern parts of Spain. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Greek PM Kyriakos Mitsotakis have reaffirmed their commitment to strengthen strategic partnership between the two countries. In a telephonic conversation, both leaders appreciated the momentum generated in bilateral ties through recent high-level exchanges. They agreed to deepen collaboration across trade, defense, shipping and connectivity. The two leaders also exchanged views on various regional and global issues of interest, including IMEC corridor and developments in West Asia. In his call, Prime Minister Mitsotakis congratulated Prime Minister Modi on his re-election following the general elections in India. In a post on X, Prime Minister Modi said that Greece is a valued partner for India within the EU as well. And India's Minister of External Affairs Dr. S. Jaishankar met his counterpart from Thailand, Maris Sangiampongsa, in New Delhi today. The two leaders discussed India-Thailand ties, multilateral cooperation and regional developments. In a social media post, Dr. Jaishankar said FM Sangiampongsa's visit for the Royal Kathina ceremony exemplifies the long-standing historical and cultural relations between the two countries. External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar will be on a 6-day visit to Australia and Singapore starting Sunday. Dr. Jaishankar will travel to Brisbane and inaugurate India's 4th consulate in Australia. He will also co-chair the 15th Foreign Ministers Framework Dialogue with his Australian counterpart Penny Wong in Canberra. The External Affairs Minister will deliver the keynote address at the inaugural session of 2nd Raisina Down Under to be held in Australian Parliament House. He is also scheduled to have interactions with Australian leadership, parliaments, members of the Indian diaspora, business community, media and think tanks. On the second leg of the visit, EAM will travel to Singapore for an official visit on 8th of November, during which he will address the 8th roundtable of ASEAN-India network of think tanks. He will also meet the leadership of Singapore to review the close partnership between the two countries and explore avenues to further enhance the bilateral relationship. India's Defence Minister Rajnath Singh visited the field gun factory in Kanpur city of North Indian state of Uttar Pradesh. The Indian minister visited a unit of Advanced Weapons and Equipment India Limited. The AWEIL specializes in manufacturing barrel and breech assemblies of various artillery guns and tanks, including Tank T-90 and Dhanush gun. During the visit, Raksha Mantri inspected key facilities, including the heat treatment and the new assembly shop of the factory, to take stock of critical indigenous defense capabilities. It specializes in manufacturing of small, medium and large caliber gun systems. And India has rejected Canada's allegations against Home Minister. In a weekly media briefing on Saturday, Ministry of External Affairs spokesperson Randhir Jaiswal informed that New Delhi summoned the representative of Canadian High Commission yesterday and protested in strongest terms the absurd and baseless references by Deputy Minister David Morrison.
We had summoned the representative of the Canadian High Commission yesterday. A diplomatic note was handed over in reference to the proceedings of the Standing Committee on Public Safety and National Security in Ottawa on October 29th, 2024. It was conveyed in a note that the Government of India protests in the strongest terms to the absurd and baseless references made to the Union Home Minister of India before the committee by Deputy Minister David Morrison. In fact, the revelation that high Canadian officials deliberately leak unfounded insinuations to the international media as part of a conscious strategy to discredit India and influence other nations only confirms the view Government of India has long held about current Canadian government's political agenda and behavioral pattern. Such irresponsible actions will have serious consequences for bilateral ties.
A high-level Indian delegation participated in G20 Disaster Risk Reduction Working Group meeting in Brazil's Belém. The delegation was led by Principal Secretary to the Prime Minister P.K. Mishra. With the active participation of the Indian delegation, consensus arrived in finalizing the first ministerial declaration on disaster risk reduction. During the sessions, Mishra shared the progress made by the Government of India in reducing disaster risks and in upscaling disaster financing in the country. India and China look like they are sticking to their deal to pull back their soldiers from positions of confrontation at the de facto border in eastern Ladakh region, following an agreement to do so more than 4 years after friction between the two neighbors led to troops clashing fatally in the Galwan Valley. Sources say progress has been made now with the resumption of patrolling at one of the disputed points. Here's a report.
Images of bonhomie and exchange of Diwali sweets after over 4 years between Indian and Chinese troops at different points of the line of actual control on Thursday. These were followed closely by another positive development related to the ongoing disengagement process the next day. Sources said patrolling by Indian troops in Demchok in eastern Ladakh resumed on Friday. Patrolling at another friction point of Tepsang is expected to begin soon as well. India's Defence Minister Rajnath Singh, while visiting the state of Arunachal Pradesh on Diwali, had indicated that the disengagement process with China will soon be completed and it will also be taken forward.
गलेशी पर कुछ क्षेत्रों में कॉन्फ्लिक्ट्स को रिजॉल्व करने के लिए भारत और चीन के बीच डिप्लोमेटिक और मिलिट्री दोनों ही लेवल्स पर बातचीत हो रही थी। अभी हाल की बातचीत के बाद ग्राउंड सिचुएशन को रेस्टोर करने के लिए आपस में ब्रॉड कंसेंसस हुई है। इस सहमत के आधार पर डिसएंगेजमेंट का प्रोसेस लगभग यह पूरा हो गया है और हमारा प्रयास होगा कि बात डिसएंगेजमेंट से भी आगे बढ़े, लेकिन उसके लिए हमें भी प्रतीक्षा करनी होगी।
On the 21st of October, the two neighbors reached an agreement aimed at ending the eastern Ladakh standoff, which was followed by a meeting between Prime Minister Narendra Modi and China's President Xi Jinping on the sidelines of the BRICS summit in Russia, their first bilateral meeting in 5 years. The interim period had witnessed a ratcheting up of tensions between the two sides since May 2020 over certain disputed areas in eastern Ladakh, which peaked in June that year when soldiers clashed with each other in the Galwan Valley, leading to casualties on both sides. It triggered a long-running standoff in the rugged, cold desert area. Each side stationed tens of thousands of troops backed by artillery, tanks and fighter jets in close confrontation positions. With disengagement now nearing completion, the focus has to clearly remain on not only ensuring that it is adhered to by both sides, but also taken forward towards de-escalation and de-induction. Gautam Roy's report for DD India.
In Bangladesh, Sanatan Jagran Manch held a massive rally in Chattogram on Friday, demanding the withdrawal of false case filed against 19 people, including Chinmoy Krishnadas Brahmachari of International Society for Krishna Consciousness. The platform issued a 2-day ultimatum and threatened to launch a series of protests if this case is not withdrawn by coming Monday. Chinmoy Krishnadas is the spokesperson of Sanatan Jagran Manch, a platform advocating the rights of Hindus and other minorities in Bangladesh. On Wednesday night, BNP worker Feroz Khan from Chittagong filed a sedition case against Chinmoy Krishnadas Brahmachari and 18 others for allegedly hoisting a saffron flag above Bangladesh's national flag at Chattogram's independent monument last week. 3 months have passed when Bangladesh PM Sheikh Hasina was forced out, but instability and lawlessness still prevail in Bangladesh. People from minority communities live in a perpetual state of fear and insecurity. Violence and protests are continuing. The nation's garment industry also faces deep crisis marked by mass factory closures and layoffs. The country appears to be in a chaotic churn. Here's more in this report.
A torch procession was held in Dhaka by the Bangladesh United Minority Alliance to demand better treatment of minorities in the country following a sedition charge against 19 people from minority communities. They have been charged with sedition over hoisting of a saffron flag, exposing the selective targeting of minorities in Bangladesh. The case seems to be one of retribution, coming at a time when Hindu organizations held a large gathering in Chattogram seeking a law and tribunal for the protection of minorities. Thursday's rally came after the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, Volker Turk, called on Wednesday for minority protection and a national process of truth and healing following protests that led to the ouster of former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina in August. At a time when there has been widespread outrage over the attacks on minorities in Bangladesh, US presidential candidate Donald Trump has strongly condemned the violence, calling the country one that is in a total state of chaos. Meanwhile, an angry mob stormed Bangladesh's Jatiya Party's central office in Dhaka on Thursday and set the building ablaze. The party had a brief alliance with ousted Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina's Awami League in 2019, which might be the cause of this violence, although no one has claimed responsibility for this attack. Bangladeshi garment industry, a vital cog in the country's economy and an important supplier to global brands, is facing a deep crisis marked by mass factory closures and layoffs due to uncertainties and instability in the country. Bureau Report, DD India.
And still to come on DD India News Hour. Liverpool, Man City, Bournemouth and Top Guns gear up for action-packed weekend as English Premier League returns to action today. Vinicius Jr. and Rafinha to lead Brazil's squad for World Cup qualifiers. Neymar still out.
Geopolitics and trade deals. Economic challenges amid development. Hard work and the path to prosperity. It's the economy
always. Between walkers, money is what money does and says. Supply creates its own demand. Between the bulls pulls and bears tears. When supply chains globalization and India rises to the podium. We'll get you centered with the economic brief at 8 p.m. every Thursday on DD India.
You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Siddharth Bharadwaj. Good news on the economic front as India's gross good and services tax or GST collection in October stood at 1.87 lakh crore rupees, registering a yearly jump of 8.9%. According to India's Finance Ministry, in October 2023, the total GST collection stood at 1.72 lakh crore rupees. The collections in CGST, SGST, IGST and cess increased year on year in October. So far, in 2024, the total GST collection has been higher at 9.4% at 12.74 lakh crore rupees compared to 11.64 lakh crore rupees mopped up in the corresponding period of 2023. October 2024 recorded the second best GST mop-up. Highest ever collection was in April 2024 at more than 2.1 lakh crore rupees. India's coal production in October reached 84.45 million tons, marking a 7.48% increase from last year. Coal dispatch from captive and other entities also witnessed a notable spike of 16.18 million tons in October. Additionally, cumulative coal production till October stood at 537.45 million tons, representing a growth of 6.1%. Such remarkable surge in coal production showcases India's commitment at ensuring a reliable coal supply to meet growing energy demands. The National Stock Exchange of India launched its official mobile app NSE India on occasion of Diwali. The newly launched NSE India mobile app, now available on both the Apple App Store and Android Play Store, promises an intuitive and secure experience for investors on the go. The NSE also expanded its corporation website to support 11 regional languages. With this latest initiative, NSE's website now offers content in total of 12 languages. This linguistic expansion will reach investors across linguistic and regional barriers, fostering increased engagement and inclusivity. Let's take a look at other stories making news. India's Railway Minister Ashwini Vaishnav visited the New Delhi railway station on Friday evening to review passenger amenities and travel arrangements during the ongoing festive rush. Speaking to media persons, the minister praised the initiatives taken by the railway officials for a smooth travel experience and praised passengers for their cooperation. Indian Railway is operating special trains for the convenience and smooth travel of passengers in view of the festive season. Over 3,200 special trains are being operated by Northern Railway from major railway stations in the Delhi region, with over 80 special trains being operated today toward the eastern region from Delhi. In India's mountainous state of Uttarakhand, the doors of the Gangotri temple were closed for the winter on occasion of Annakut festival in Uttarkashi district on Saturday. Gangotri Dham is one of the 4 most sacred pilgrimage sites in Hindu faith. The Ganga Utsav 2024 set to commence at Chandi Ghat in India's holy city of Haridwar will once again celebrate the glory of Ganga River and India's cultural heritage. This year, the festival will mark the 8th anniversary of Ganga being declared the national river. This edition is particularly special as it will take place along the river banks. India's Minister for Jal Shakti, C.R. Patil, will inaugurate the event. A major highlight this year is said to be the 50-day Ganga Women's Rafting campaign organized in collaboration with the BSF, which will travel through various cities along the Ganga River and conclude at Ganga Sagar. This campaign aims to promote women's empowerment and convey the message of Ganga conservation. And time now for sport updates. India have taken control of the third and final test against New Zealand at the Wankhede Stadium in Mumbai. Ravindra Jadeja and Ravichandran Ashwin wreak havoc as the duo took 6 New Zealand wickets between them in second innings. New Zealand are currently 8 down with lead of over 140 runs. Earlier, India were bowled out for 263, taking first innings lead of 28 runs. Shubman Gill top scored with 90 while Rishabh Pant slammed 60. In reply, left-arm New Zealand spinner Ajaz Patel picked 5-wicket haul to bring the visitors back in the game. He finished with figures of 5 for 103. On day 1, Ravindra Jadeja claimed his 14th 5-wicket haul in Test cricket as India made a remarkable comeback to bowl out New Zealand for 235 runs. English Premier League returns to action this weekend with big matches lined up. The soccer encounters will be crucial as they would set the pace for the team as the year comes to close in its end. Here we take a look at some interesting clashes to watch out for.
English Premier League is all set to return to action this weekend with much at stake for big guns who want to continue their winning streak at the event. To begin with, Arsenal is all set to take on Newcastle at St James Park. And 2 wins from 5 with 9 goals conceded in that time, as many as in the previous 19 combined, is a cause for mild alarm as Arsenal slipped to 5 points behind leaders Manchester City. Another great match would be Liverpool versus Brighton, and it certainly wasn't quite the controlled Liverpool we saw in previous matches. On the other hand, Brighton and Hove Albion are the agents of chaos. There have been 28 goals in Brighton league matches this season, which means an average of 3.1 per match. Ipswich versus Leicester City. For all the praise Ipswich Town have received for their competitiveness in Premier League encounters, there comes a time when a winless start begins to affect their morale. Matches against fellow promoted sides are practically must-wins, and Ipswich, who drew 1-1 at Southampton last month, simply have to win this one. Bournemouth versus Man City. Bournemouth are yet to win any of their 20 league matches against Man City, which is the most one side have faced another without ever winning in English Football League history. Indeed, Man City have won all of their 14 Premier League encounters against Bournemouth by an aggregate score, which includes a 6-1 and 1-0 success against Antonio Irola's side last season. Now, as the season enters a hectic phase of league games, cup games and European games coming thick and fast, this could be the phase that defines where teams are going to end up in the new year. Sports Desk, DD India.
And Vinicius Jr. and Rafinha led Brazil's squad for this month's World Cup qualifier, while Neymar was left out of team named by coach Dorival Jr. on Friday. Rafinha has been one of Barca's standout performers in the first half of season and is coming off the back of a goal in a 4-0 win over Real Madrid. He also had a hat-trick against Bayern Munich in the Champions League. Vinicius Jr. will return to international action after missing last month's qualifiers with a neck injury, with Real Madrid teammate Endrick was left out. Brazil, who are 4th in the South American standings with 16 points, play at Venezuela on November 14 before hosting Uruguay 5 days later. Manchester United have named Portuguese Ruben Amorim as head coach to replace Erik ten Hag, the Premier League club said on Friday. The 39-year-old coach won Primeira Liga titles in 2021 and 2024 with Sporting Lisbon, now has signed a deal until 2027 and will join the club on November 11. Ruud van Nistelrooy will continue to tackle the charge of the team until Amorim arrives at the Old Trafford. United sacked Ten Hag on Monday after a 2-1 defeat by West Ham left them languishing 14th in the Premier League with just 3 wins from 9 matches. For the first time in 36 years, Los Angeles held a championship parade for the Dodgers as tens of thousands of fans lined the streets of downtown LA on Friday to celebrate the franchise's 8th World Series championship. Thousands more gathered at Dodger Stadium for a pep rally in center field to conclude the festivities. The celebration began at the stadium and the parade wrapped up by noon as the buses carrying the World Series champions made their way to the field. For many players and many manager Dave Roberts, the day honored both of the Dodgers World Series titles in the last 5 seasons. Paragliding World Cup 2024 is going on in Himachal Pradesh's Bear Pelling, which is Asia's highest and one of the world's best paragliding sites. Pilots from across 31 countries will compete at the Paragliding World Cup. One of the 148 applicants, 105 pilots from 32 countries have been shortlisted for the competition so far. There will be a practice session on Saturday and competition task will be given on Sunday. In fact, from Sunday onwards, the task will be given, and Paragliding World Cup Association said that complete security and safety arrangements have been done to ensure smooth conduct of competition. Tournament will culminate on November 9th. That's all for this edition of DD India News Hour, but let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. For those on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates from India and across the world on DD India mobile app. The app is available on both Android and iOS platforms, and you can scan the QR code on the screen to download now. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Siddharth Bharadwaj from all of us here in Delhi. Thanks for watching DD India News Hour.
Geopolitics